Hello, hello. Today, we're talking about building AI agents. We're going to be covering what in the world is an AI agent. I know we've probably heard a million times over people talking about AI agent this, AI agent that. We're going to be agents or this. Everyone's doing agents now, and it's been a lot, and I think that there's been not nearly enough clarity as maybe there should be for figuring out actually what agents are. So we're going to answer some of that. We're going to talk about how to package up your process using skills, what makes a good skill, what is a skill, and then we're going to build a skill together. So, first and foremost, what in the world is an agent? I am curious here. Do we have any thoughts about like what an agent is to people? I'd love to hear what people think of when they think of agent. Do they like what does building an agent mean to you? I am really curious because there's been so much talk online, on the news, and LinkedIn posts about building agents, and it feels like there's been a lot of fanfare, but not necessarily a lot of technical clarity, and I hope to give some of that technical clarity today. I know that people are largely familiar with chatbots, right? Chatbots answer a question. They were the first and initial revision of what an AI agent was. It is the ChatGPT that we all know and I don't know if we can say love, but like maybe, or use reluctantly in some cases, or maybe some people love them. There's a wide gambit, but those initial chatbots were really just call and response. You were directly calling the language model, it was directly responding to you. Not very complicated. An agent is something that has a little bit more. Specifically, it has tools in a loop. So it has the base model. We started with just models back in the day of the initial creations of these chatbots. Later on, we added tools and instructions. And skills are where sort of they play in with instructions. But the model and tools come with Claude. Again, we're focusing on Claude today, but this does parallel to other providers. And the instructions are where you and the skills come in. This is what an agent is. Now, it might be a little complicated, but I'm just going to walk through it. So, I want to first note that if you're using Claude right now, you're using an agent. Have you ever noticed how you ask Claude, like, hey, what's the latest on this thing? Or what's happening here? Or hey, can you find and summarize this information? It doesn't just respond to you. It says searching the web, finding these sources, doing this, doing that. You're actively using an agent on a day-to-day basis, even if it's not explicitly made clear in the interface. And what is an agent? Well, you said something like, list the latest news today. It's going to go in and decide, okay, do I have enough information to give them the latest news? No, because it only has so much information. So it calls a tool. That tool is searching the web. It goes to the outside world, be it through files, APIs, other systems it has available, searching the web. It goes ahead and finds articles. Great, it's got those articles. It's returned those to the model, and then it passes those back to the model. It's gotten some summaries. Maybe that's enough. So at that point, it says, okay, well, I have a list of the latest news. Let's go ahead and respond to the user. And it serves it back out. If you give it a more complicated task, like say, for example, can you go ahead and tell me the top five most recent papers published to archive? And could you summarize each of them and the content in there? Well, first and foremost, it's going to go and do a similar flow. It's going to go in, hey, do I have those on hand? No. Well, it's going to go and list those, and then it's going to get that result. Then it's going to say, I have a list of the papers, but I haven't summarized them yet. And so it's going to go and it's going to get the actual details of the paper. It'll either do it in parallel or one by one. So let's just say one by one. It'll fetch the first paper, get the results, summarize it, fetch the second paper, get the results, summarize it, and it loops until it feels as though the goal is complete. Then it returns to you. That at its most fundamental core is what an actual agent is. And so when people talk about agents, at their most atomic level, this is an agent. Now, when people talk about building agents, you're not building this. This isn't what people usually mean. I think that skills and agents, building an agent is, I don't know, an agent is such a conflated term because what I've just showed you here, this is an agent. And so when we talk about building agents, maybe a more accurate phrase would be customizing your agent, because that's what you're really doing and what most people refer to. There are certain people who are actually building agents, but those tend to be people working at OpenAI, working at Anthropic, Hugging Face, NVIDIA. Those people are actually building agents. You and I, on a day-to-day basis, are usually just customizing agents, but for all intents and purposes, I'm going to call it building agents because that's what everyone's been calling it, and might as well use the terms that everyone's been using. Skills, which we're going to talk about here, are what you actually build and interact with. So here in your task and the message you send to the chatbot, you can invoke a skill with a slash command, or they can be automatically pulled up. So when you're going through that process, say you had a skill loaded in, which we'll get into more later, that skill is help summarize a paper. Well, here it might say, I have that paper. Ooh, I see that I have a skill that says summarizing papers. Let me load that in before I actually go ahead and try to do the summarization of the papers. An agent is the loop. The skill are instructions that you can pull in to the model. You're going to hear them used interchangeably. I wouldn't worry too much about the exact terminology. Just know that when you're customizing or building an agent, you're actually writing skills. In other platforms such as ChatGPT, previously they didn't actually have skills in the interface, and they still don't for consumer plans. You can only get skills in ChatGPT if you are on the business or enterprise tiers. So just know that if you go into the UI, you have a personal account, you're not going to see skills. It's in the business realm. And then in Microsoft land, that's going to be Copilot agents. And Foundry, though that Foundry is a little bit more advanced, Copilot's usually how you're going to see that in Microsoft. Okay, so I've mentioned skills a few times. What are skills? Previously, skills didn't exist. Previously, we didn't even have the agent loop. It was really just call and response. Hey, I have a question. Can you write me a poem? Or can you give me a recipe? And then it just gives the result. Then we had agents. Agents do things. They loop over stuff. But they're broadly general, and they are maybe good at some things, maybe not good at other things. People then from there started to customize them. So they gave longer prompts, right? You remember prompt engineering? That was going to be a whole job. Like, I don't know if you saw on LinkedIn or the news, prompt engineering roles surging at OpenAI and Microsoft, and their whole job was writing prompts and things like that. So we went from just chatbots to we started writing really detailed and long prompts for the agents because, well, they weren't intrinsically very smart. They were kind of blunt tools. And we ended up writing these very, very long prompts. Those very long prompts went into your chat window. Then people started baking those very long prompts into specific chatbots, or in the OpenAI land, custom GPTs. The problem with custom GPTs and those specific agents that just have that big text window filled in, pre-filled, is they're not very broad, and it's kind of obnoxious to have to choose the right one at the right time. Ooh, should I be using my writing agent for this, or my math agent for this, or my protocol agent for this? It's cognitive load, and it's difficult to know which is the right tool to use at the right time to keep track of all of them. So eventually, skills came to be, thanks to Anthropic. Skills, instead of having a pre-baked prompt that always exists, it's just a text file. That is all a skill is. An agent takes a skill, loads it into the conversation, and it's basically like copy pasting some text into the chat window, so it better knows how to do something. So a skill can be your process. It's written down and packaged into a text file that Claude can pull up. Under the hood, it's literally just text. That's it. It's just a text file. So all these crazy people talking about I made $10 trillion building agents, they very well just may mean they're talking about writing text files. Nothing wrong with that, but it's nothing as mythical or scary as I think a lot of people might want others to believe. These are really cool because instead of back in the day where you had to choose the right chatbot to get the right result, these can be used as reusable building blocks. In fact, when I'm doing software engineering, I have a suite of skills. I have skills for brainstorming. I have skills for project planning. I have skills for code review. I have skills for picking up a project. I have skills for, ooh, I'm in the middle of a project and I realize that I'm going to do something that I didn't expect to have to do. So let's reshape the project. These could all be one massive skill, but the problem is you only have so much in your context window, and as these companies continually are lowering their limits, they're making these plans less inclusive, right? We used to be able to get $200 or $100 a month, and you'd feel like you never ran out of usage, and now you feel like you're running out of usage way too quickly. Well, breaking things up into skills can help with that as well. That'll be a whole separate webinar. Effective use of your context window, minimizing cost. In fact, just last week, I think OpenAI reduced the cost of their cheapest model by 80%, which is fascinating and very interesting, but optimizing cost with language models will be another discussion. Just know that skills can be a very important part of that. And they're just text files, so they can be used at any time, even mid-conversation, and Claude can pull them in automatically. Why not just write it myself every time? Like, no big deal. The problem is you're probably not going to give sufficient detail every single time that you give that prompt, right? Sometimes you might put a lot of information, sometimes you might put a little information, sometimes you might give this, not give that. When you write a skill, it's going to be significantly more reliable. This does not solve the issue of non-determinism with language models. That's a completely separate issue, but it does help with lowering the effort for getting reproducible results. Not completely reproducible, but much more than if you were just writing it yourself every time. Inside the skill, it's a name. Say we're going to be doing a live demo later. The skill that we're going to be building is a meeting summarizer. So the name could be meeting summarizer. The description, it's literally just what it does. And then everything else is the skill. Inside of skills, there can be other files attached, like templates, like little scripts and things like that. We're not talking about that today. That is a later and more advanced webinar. So you can just think of it like a text file. It's got a name and a description. Those details are always present in the chat window. Why? Because the agents have to know, what do I have available to call in? And when the agent or you decide to pull in a skill, it pulls in all those details in the full description. And as I said before, they're not just for Claude. If anyone has had a call with me where we are talking about if we should be rolling out Claude or rolling out ChatGPT or Gemini or any number of permutations of different options that you do, Claude and Gemini, all these different things, you've probably heard me say, everyone's copying everyone's homework. Why? Well, competition. These companies have diminishing returns in terms of, or diminishing moats. Initially, back in the day, OpenAI was the company. They had the best models. They had, well, really the only frontier models. And then some people fractioned off over to Anthropic. They built up, but originally it was ChatGPT and OpenAI with the big things, the big moat. They had the best models. But over time, models are getting better and better. China is releasing better models. There's open source models, which means just having the best models is difficult to do to begin with. You have to copy everyone's work, which is what these companies are doing. Anthropic came up with skills, rolled them out. I believe Anthropic as well made them an open standard. This was originally actually for software engineering, but I'm not going to go too deep into the history, though it would be fun. But then OpenAI copied them for Codex. And now, as of I think just last month, we got skills in ChatGPT, as I said, just for the business tiers, but it's exactly the same thing because it's an open standard, which I think is really cool. You can use these in either of the two premier providers. And I refer to the two, Anthropic and OpenAI, as the premier providers. I think everything else is okay, but good to know. So, how do you make a skill? You can make a skill out of anything. These are some attributes that are potentially good categories for building a skill. You can choose one or many of these. If it's repeatable, done weekly or more, roughly the same way each time. If it's well-defined, clear cut, you do this, this, that, and this, and then you get this result, Maybe it's open-ended. I love using skills for brainstorming. I will specifically say, I want to build a branch out map. Give me 4 options. Walk me through the options. And then for the options I choose, give me another 4 options. Skills don't have to be rigid, regimented processes. And as of later models that are being released by these providers, companies, specifically Anthropic, are actually saying, please stop being so regimented in how you tell an agent to solve something. These agents are very clever, very smart. In fact, I'm sure a lot of people have seen that OpenAI, wait, was this? Yeah, OpenAI too. Yes, OpenAI and Anthropic have both had their models hack other companies while trying to complete a task, which is wild. But needless to say, these models are very creative. So you should experiment. Try being super specific, try being broad. We can get into that more later, but any of these are good categories for skills that can be built. If it's inconsistent today, if you do something with an agent and you don't get the same results every time, or you get mixed results on different tasks, a skill might be able to be helpful here. And then if something's just grueling work, like filtering through, I don't know, 20 different Excel files, aggregating data, summarizing, producing results, checking those results that the actual data is valid, which is a very important part of using AI, having AI check its work. That's also a story for another time. These can all be good categories that can be targeted for building a skill. Here are some simple ones. Weekly status reports. If you have the right connector set up with your AI agent, this is perfect. So say, for example, I want to get the week's updates into a standard report format for my manager of the things that I've done. If your agent has sufficient access governed effectively through IT policies, please, then you can have it go and filter through your Teams messages. It can filter through your Outlook. It can filter through your SharePoint. Say, oh, well, you did this, 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 and that, and here's your executive summary that you can send over to your manager to tell them what you've done. Meeting into action items. We're going to talk about that more later. I think that this is very cool, and it's sort of an immediate and interesting skill that we can build together. Formatting, quality checks. So say you have a protocol or a presentation, maybe like one we're running today, or something that you're going to send out to the team. You can build a skill for doing reviews. And say, for example, in that review, you build into the skill, I want you to not only review this, I want you to create a list of findings that you think are concerning, say inconsistencies, logical errors, factual inaccuracies. Make a list of these from high, medium, and low, and your confidence score next to it. You can build a skill for that as well. Here are some easy ways that you can think of things that you can build a skill off of. What do you do consistently or on a recurring basis that follows similar steps? Easy. That's a good one. So you can just ask yourselves these questions as you're going around your day, and maybe they will help you think of some things that would be good skills. Where am I moving information mechanically from one place to another by hand? So say part of your job function or role or something you do occasionally is reading through a long list of data, finding the matching data over here, and then matching those rows, extracting them, bringing them somewhere else, copying folders and files from one SharePoint location to another SharePoint location. That's a good use case for a skill. If you do that, I would recommend you also make sure that you actually have it validate its results, which self-referential checking is one of the most underrated and powerful things that you can do with language models, but you don't want to let a language model decide everything for you. Having it provide you feedback, analyses, and verification is very important. And then what tedious tasks do you keep putting off or rushing through at the last minute? This can be very good for language models. Also, they can be really useful for just like getting you unstuck. I prototyped a skill which was pretty interesting called, I think, unstick. We might run through that, might not, but I basically just said, hey, build a skill for me that helps me decompose an issue that I'm working on. Maybe it's daunting, maybe it's been something I'm putting off, or it's like a very big task and I don't know how to start decomposing it and getting work done. That can be a great skill as well. Skills don't always have to be for a specific mechanical process. Skills can also be sort of psychological or meta processes that you run through on your own. How do you turn it into a skill? Well, collect data about how you do it today, work through the task, brain dump, One of the biggest tips I would give about working with AI agents, be it for building skills or doing a task or any different kinds of categories of things you might do with an agent, voice to text, dictation. And I'll show you on the UI, but actually I can't click it because it'll cut off my audio for the meeting, but I'll show you it on the UI. Voice to text is phenomenal for working with AI agents because I don't know about y'all, but I'm not the kind of person that can type at 3 million words per minute. I can talk a lot faster than I can type, and I'm much more willing to talk through something than I am to write through it. Language models do very well with lots of data. And if you talk to them, hey, so I'm working on this issue. I mean, I do this once a week. Well, actually, maybe I do it 2 times a week or 3 times a week. Ramble to it. It doesn't have to be precise. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just talk to it and get that down onto the chat window. And then work with Claude. Say, hey, I know I just brain dumped here, but what do you think about that? Does this look good? Does that look good? Do you think there are ways that we could do this better? How could we package this into a skill? What parts of this are good? What parts of this are bad? What do you think is going to work well in the skill or not work well in the skill? Ask all these questions. Have it interview you. Say explicitly, interview me for building this skill. And then once you've built the skill, test it on real work. Do input output, right? Take something that you'd want to do, run it through. How did it do? Copy all that, put it into a new chat window and say, hey, we're working on this skill. Here's a test run that I did. I'm not happy with the result because X, Y, and Z. What went wrong in the skill? Claude can pop that skill back open, look through it. Okay, here. Right here in the skill, you said hard gate. Make sure that you always do this. Well, that's probably not going to give you good results because X, Y, and Z. And here in your chat, you can see this happening. You shouldn't just give up when it doesn't give a good result. You should iterate and refine. And then once you get something that you really like, share it with your team. It can be very helpful for your team members if you send them the skills that you use. And actually, Anthropic lets you share skills with your team, which is a very cool feature that not a lot of people use. If this sounds daunting, and it can be, reach out to us. We'd be happy to give you a hand. I can sit in a call. One of the other engineers can sit in a call with you. We can walk through a skill, build it together. I'm giving a lot of tips for building really good skills, but you do not have to use all of these just to get something. And are we ready for a demo? I know I am. Let's go ahead and build a skill for doing debriefs after a meeting. I'm sure all of us in this call do a lot of meetings. We're kind of in one now, webinar, kind of like a meeting. I'm going to do voice to text and I'm going to ramble into it and then we're going to paste it out and we're going to build that skill. Now I've already built this skill and I'll probably use the pre-built one, but I want you to see how easy it can be to build a skill. The first thing that I am going to do though is I am going to go ahead and turn off the skill that I already made. Otherwise, when I do that, it's going to say, hey, sorry, you actually have a skill for this. So what are we doing? Which is what happened earlier when I was testing. So I want to build a skill for doing, I want to take transcripts from a meeting and I want to make them more understandable and actionable. I want to get an executive summary maybe and action items. I'd like to get a list of things that were maybe decided or maybe we talked about but didn't decide, maybe things that are hard to decide like a gradient, hard decisions that were made, things that we talked about but didn't come to a resolution, things that were mentioned but just were never followed up on, action items to follow, and maybe a lens that I can view it from my perspective. Maybe we have our static analysis at the top of what happened, the summary, action items, decisions, those kinds of things. And then we have at the end personalized experience framed towards me as an individual. And let's see. I think that that's good, but if I'm missing something, let me know. I think before we even go to building the skill, we should talk about it a bit more, get any information you might need from me and any clarity that I didn't provide you. And then let's also go ahead and prototype a few ways that the layout of this skill could look so that we have a better idea of what the actual output will be before we start writing the skill. I would not have written all of that. I'm telling you right now, all that, especially in that amount of time, it's gold is what it is. I'm going to go ahead and do medium because we don't want to wait forever. And I already have a version of the skill that we can play with, but Let's just give it a second and wait while that runs through. And right now, what's it doing? It is going ahead and saying, the user wants to do this and that with the meeting transcripts. They're asking for this. Before I even look at that, I should focus on understanding this. I'm wondering what it should look like. What does it look like? Are these transcripts? Kind of fun to look at the internal dialogue here. Good instinct to talk first. Okay. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Ownerless action. Sure. Commitments made to you. Prior meeting follow through. These are recurring. Okay. Is skill similar to a function in the traditional programming terms? Similar to a function in the, sure. So kind of loading in a skill is like a function call. If I actually were to, for a moment, go back here. So this act part where you call a tool, that is calling functions. And in fact, the harness, we're not going to talk too much about harnesses because if we do, I'll never stop talking because I love them. They're very cool. But when you load a skill, that's calling a function to load some text. So a skill is just text, but it's loaded through a function call. And it's, in a way, kind of like a function, but it's tricky because it's feeding information into the model and then it's changing how the model behaves. Whereas a function in programming land is deterministic, it always behaves the same way every time. A skill loads up some instructions that the model may follow to a T. It may do something a little different. It's less deterministic than a function, which tends to be very consistent, unless you're, say, for example, calling math.random every time. Does that answer your question? And in the meantime, okay, so layout A, the briefing. Okay, in one line, this, then that, watch this, decisions, decided-ish, leaning, okay, open, I don't hate that. This, okay, it's got kind of a ledger here. Okay. C, action first, your next moves, inverts the priority. I'm feeling like I like B more. What do y'all think? A is like harder to skim for me. Um, Action items for you, and then B, the ledger. I kind of like that this is just easily actionable. So let's go with B for now. I like the scannability. Typos, doesn't matter because language models don't care. And we're going to let this go for a little bit longer. Going to go through it until we can persist a skill, but then I'm going to pop over to the one that I've already created. Okay, a real transcript, your name as it appears. We'll do the real transcript later. I'd like to just go ahead and, you know what? I will actually go through and provide a transcript. I think this would be handy. So, ask for my name each time. I think I'm going to share this skill with my team. And so let's just leave it open-ended so that anyone could run this skill. I would say rate the conversation with the user as candid, I think is appropriate. And then the output should just go straight into the chat window. Yeah. And because I'm running a demo right now, can you just ask me like a multi-choice question? I think that would be neat to show the people on the webinar that I'm running. So say, for example, ask me how the communication should be blunt, candid, et cetera, et cetera. There you go. Look at that. It'll occasionally ask you questions like this, which I think is quite neat. So I'm going to do candid. Yeah. And then follow through from previous meetings. Let's skip it for now. And then I'm going to just grab a random file that I just created here synthetically. This is not any real content. I just said, hey, make a fake conversation about lab space planning. It's going to write the skill now. Here's a demo file that you can use. Give it a run through and let's see what we think. It's going to take a little moment to run this. And right now it's just writing the skill. I'll go ahead into a new, I'll pop over here and you can see that for the one that I've already made, I mean, it's literally a text file. It's got the name, it's got a description, the debrief. Oh, here it is. Okay, so here's the skill. This is literally it. Here's the pretty one where you can see it's looking all nice here and rendered. And then here's what it looks like in actuality, the raw text. It's got a name, it's got a description, and then the actual content. This is all people are talking about when they're saying building agents, which is hopefully a little bit more approachable and something that you can get started with. Let's go ahead and save skill of meeting ledger. And I'm also going to say, here's a demo that you can use. Give it a run through. Does this make sense what this is? I mean, it's literally a text file with some instructions. I'll make it pretty again so it's easier to read, but turn a raw meeting transcript into a scannable ledger, a status keyed table of every topic, unanswered pushback, action items with owners, candid personal section written for one attendee. And then, let's just say we're writing for Dan. And then in a new chat, I'm actually going to use one that I've already created. So I'm going to go to skills. I'm going to go to meeting debrief. And I'll toss off this ledger one because I spent a little bit more time on this debrief one. And I'm going to toss in this other fake one. And then I'm going to pull in meeting debrief. And let's just run this like we were running it with a normal meeting after the meeting. Hey, I want to understand what happened. Okay. And so we are running through this. And here is our analysis of the meeting. So you can see here, here's the ledger of decisions, who, whether or not it's decided, how much it is decided, the details. And then, oh, interesting. Classically, Claude seems to be having, okay, we're good. Sometimes Claude has some availability issues, which is a whole separate thing. But you can see here's another one that I've already made, meeting debrief, which frankly, maybe we'll send this skill out because I honestly think it's pretty handy. Spent a little bit longer on this one, and here's the meeting. So it's got the details, it's got the thread. Potency assay drift, tech transfer package, stability, decisions, do this, maybe do this, probably not going to do this. Some accomplishments settled in the room. A hidden dependency surfaced. An indefinite block became a dated deliverable. Minor, wins, major, open items, potency root cause, dropped without resolution. Also, if this is too much, you can just say TLDR this for me. I'm Marcus. You can also see here, I put in, want to dig in, full narrative, Q4. And then here's the TLDR. I'm waiting on this. I have to own these things. Named without committing. Tom asserted you'd all agree not to requalify this year, and you said fine by me. You may want to claim the packing rig question you never got to finish. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what skills can do. There are 1,000,001 different skills. I will say one other note. Please do not download and open random skills you find on the internet. Verify what the skills actually do because they can drive the agent to do things, and that can be good things, that can be bad things. Work with IT. Do not just import random skills into the ecosystem. That could be tricky. So, if you want a starting prompt for building a skill, this is a pretty good one. You can go ahead and give this a try. You can just fill in your own Mad Lib style inputs here. We'll also send this out later. And to recap, agents work until something's done. Skills are just text. They really are. They're just text that gets imported into the agent. Packaging helps remove guesswork, and you don't need code. This is text. It's just text. I think if I had one takeaway, it's skills are just text, and honing them can be a lot of effort, but getting started isn't. And I'd recommend you give it a try. If you'd like to dive through this with your team, work on some specific processes and issues you have, feel free to reach out. You can email me directly. You can go to the Bay State contact. You can scan this QR code. And thank you all for joining. I think now we'll just do some Q&A before we wrap up. Any questions? Hopefully this has made the idea of AI agents a little bit less daunting. Fun fact, I actually use, I think, like probably no more than 10 different skills on a daily basis. But those skills that I do use are incredibly helpful. And frankly, most of the time are just kind of automated in the background, which is pretty neat. Alrighty, well, thanks for your time, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you all again soon.